Hi friends, welcome to our YouTube channel Odontology, the study of teeth. Today we are going to see about secondary palate formation in detail. In last class we have been dealing with the formation of primary palate or a intermaxillary segment and the development of phase, right? So this is the continuation of the that video which includes the formation of the secondary palate. Okay, so before going into detail about the formation of secondary palate, you should know what is intermaxillary segment. I have explained in detail in the last class, but I have drawn a simplified image here. This yellow portion is your primary palate or intermaxillary process or intermaxillary segment. Okay, so the pink color portion which I have marked here is your maxillary process. Okay, you have maxillary process on both sides of your intermaxillary segment. Okay, in the formation of the secondary palate, this maxillary process is going to play a very big role in the formation, okay, of the secondary palate. Okay, so before going into detail, you should know what are the structures I have been drawn in this image. Okay, so let's see each and every structure in this image I have drawn here. Okay, this is very easy to understand, so listen properly. Okay, to know in detail, you should know actually what are the structure involving in that process. Okay, so as I said earlier, this maxillary process, you will have the maxillary process on both the sides of the intermaxillary segment, right? The main part of definitive palate is formed by two shelf-like outgrowth from the maxillary prominence. Okay, so that is called palatine shelves. See, first let's see what are the structures I have drawn. This is your tongue. Okay, and the two pink colored portion on both sides is your maxillary process. I am denoting it as MP, that is your maxillary process. This is going to be your give the two shelf like outgrowth. Okay, this is your nasal septum. This is your nasal septum, and the concave which is present or a bulginess which is present on both sides of your nasal septum is your nasal concave. Nasal concave. Okay, so these are the structure, and this space is gonna be your future oral cavity or stomatium or stomatarium. Okay, because the space is above the tongue, the palate will come and form above the tongue, and there will be a space between the tongue and the palate which forms the future oral cavity. This is your nasal septum. This is your maxillary process in this image. Okay, this pink color portion is your maxillary process. The yellow one is your intermaxillary segment, and the center one is your nasal septum. Okay, in the next image we will be dealing how it happens. Okay, so before that, let's see, the main part of the definitive palate is formed by the two shelf-like outgrowths from the maxillary prominence, right? These are the two maxillary process which gives that two shelf-like outgrowth. Okay, that's called, it is also called as palatine shelves, or it is called as mainly palatine shelves. Okay, let me mark the palatine shelf first. Okay, so this is your palatine, or the outgrowth from the maxillary process also you can define it as, but the name as palatine shelves. These appears in the 6th week of development. Once it appears, it will directed obliquely downward on each side of the tongue, as I drawn here. So it is obliquely directed downward on each side of the tongue. See, I've drawn here little slanting, right? So little facing downward, right? So see, the same thing, it will start, the outgrowth will start and reaches the tongue on both sides. Okay, but at the end of 7th week, this palatine shelf ascend to attain horizontal position or horizontal manner above the tongue. Okay, that forms the secondary palate. This is your horizontal position. Let us see the horizontal portion in detail in upcoming images. Okay, that images will define you how this horizontal pattern will takes place. Okay, so here also I have drawn only the obliquely pattern. I have not drawn with the horizontal pattern of the tongue. So in this image, let's see, as I said earlier, it also shows how it reaches the horizontal manner. I have drawn here in a horizontal pattern, right? This is your tongue. The space above is your oral cavity or OC. Let us denote it as OC, oral cavity. That is. So two maxillary process which is which reaches the horizontal manner. In the above images you have drawn, I have drawn it in a obliquely downward manner, and here it reaches the, I have drawn like horizontal pattern. Okay. So this is your, this horizontal pattern will result in the formation of the secondary palate. Okay. Anteriorly, it will fuse with the intermaxillary segment. This maxillary outgrowth or a palatine shells will anteriorly fuse with the intermaxillary segment, that is, which is, I have marked it in an yellow color, and both the sides it will give fuses. Okay. Fuse with the triangular and the incisive foramen which is present inside. This is your maxillary segment. This is your maxillary process. Okay. So it will fuse, and the fusion area you'll have the incisive foramens which differentiates, or which is a landmark between the primary and the secondary palate here. Okay. So you can see the incisive foramen between primary palate and your secondary palate. Still this center structure which I have marked as a nasal septum is still remains there. Okay. So let's see how this nasal septum will fuse with this. Okay, this is your nasal septum, right? At the same time, the palatine shell fuse the nasal septum also grow downwards and joins with the cephalic aspect of newly formed palate. Cephalic pattern is nothing but see, the cephalic is just the head portion. If you are telling like cordial means, it is your tail portion, right? Tail portion is called as cordial. If it is the head, this nasal septum will come and fuse in the head portion of the palate. Let us see it in the next image. Okay, see here also I have drawn it in the palate fusion is in horizontal pattern, right? This is your maxillary process, or palatine shells. This is your oral cavity. I am denoting as OT, and below that you have your tongue. And same thing above on the nasal septum, nasal concave, nasal chamber you have. So okay, see, this is your nasal septum. Okay, this is your you have your concave on both the sides, nasal concaves, and the white portion is your nasal chamber. This is your nasal concave. Okay, the white portion is your nasal chamber. Fine. Here I have drawn after the fusion of the palate and the entire formation, the development of first primary and secondary palate have done. Okay, has completed. That's why I have drawn like this, and the septum also will come and fused with the palate, and results finally it will looks like this only after the complete formation of the palate. Okay, so the images are very easy for you once you starts practicing with the image. You just roughly start your image with by drawing a nasal septum. Okay, so this is your nasal septum. Okay, on both sides of your nasal septum you have your nasal chamber, nasal concave, right? So you write the three set of concaves. Okay, I have drawn here. Below that you'll have both sides you'll have the outgrowth, right? Below that you have your tongue, and in between that maxillary process and your tongue you'll definitely have your future oral cavity or stomatium. Same thing. Okay, this image is also very easy. It's mainly based upon the entire secondary palate formation is mainly based upon the role of maxillary process, which fuses with the anteriorly it will fuse with the intermaxillary segment, and posterior and fuses in the middle. In the cephalic portion of the secondary palate formation, gradually this nasal septum will also come and fuse with the cephalic portion of the maxillary process, the formed secondary palate. Okay, so this is one of your important 5-mark questions that can be asked in your embryology exam. So concentrate on this. Hope you like the video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe Odontology the Study of Tooth channel.